Guys, you don't need to choose between price and quality to get an amazing and affordable shave. DollarShaveClub.com is the answer. To prove how amazing their shave really is, right now they are going to give you the first month free to join the club. DollarShaveClub.com delivers amazing razors right to Tim's door. That's right! Tim Gettys uses them. Are you saying you're better than Tim Gettys? I don't believe it. Don't make me curse at you. I don't want to. You can get those razors for a third of the price of what the greedy razor corporations want. See why over 3 million members like Tim Gettys love Dollar Shave Club. They're so confident in the quality of all of their products. Now you can get your first month of the club for free. Just pay shipping. After that, it's just a few bucks a month. No long-term commitment. No hidden fees. Go to dollarshaveclub.com/Greggy. That's dollarshaveclub.com/Greggy. Don't you want to look like Tim Gettys? I sure do. Below the waist. Nick.
Yes.
What's your topic?
My topic comes from Patreon. Back on episode 107, the Back to the Future documentary was discussed.
Who submitted this?
This was submitted by Christopher Ball.
Thank you, Christopher Ball, for supporting us over on patreon.com/kindafunny to get your topic read on the show.
Everyone said they would like to revisit this once everyone has watched it. I would like to revisit the topic as I am watching the documentary right now. What is everyone's thoughts on this classic? Now, this was, I think it was called Back in Time was the name of the documentary.
The one on Netflix. I talked about it, and you went and watched it.
You talked about it. We went and watched it.
Nobody else watched it.
I didn't do the required reading on this.
This is a topic from a while ago, so because I don't know what we're on now, but 107.
We're past 107, right, Kevin? 145. 46.
I want to get your impressions of it too. Actually,
we're opening this up to Back to the Future.
Yeah, well, because I didn't.
We're going to
think
talk
the
about the movie
documentary-
Back to the Future. Don't worry.
fan.
I didn't think that documentary was that great.
No, that's the thing either. I didn't hate it, but it was very much one of those documentaries of like, hey, here's what it's like to be a Back to the Future fan.
Right,
Like, I redid the DeLorean and all this stuff. It's like, all right, cool. And like, I wanted more. Like on the Back to the Future Blu-rays, there's a great behind the scenes documentary with all the Eric Stoltz footage and all this different stuff. Like, that's what I want. That's the kind of Back to the Future.
Really cool.
But this was about fans. I can't knock it for that. I think it knew what it was about, but it just wasn't what I wanted.
Yeah, again, that was exactly my perception as well. Which was similar to the Ghostbusters documentary that we watched. I think you're in.
I'm in Ghost Heads.
Ghost Heads, yeah. Which was I went in expecting it to be a documentary about Ghostbusters, and it was more about the fans of Ghostbusters, which was it's still a good documentary, but it's just not what I wanted necessarily. But yeah, but I guess the broader question then is, let's just talk about Back to the Future for a little while.
Absolutely.
It's perfect,
fantastic
movie. Period. Stem to stern.
I was saying perfect for trilogy.
That's crazy fucking bullshit talk that I can't believe you just came out of your goddamn mouth.
Well, so here's the reason I say that is that
because you were a kid.
No, but yes, 2 and 3 obviously have their faults, but I think in terms of 1 being just great movie, right? I'm happy that 2 and 3 happened, and I think that they do tell a cool story, and they continued it in a way that was very interesting. 3 was radically different than 2.
Yeah.
2 very similar to 1, but in a cool way, and it added a whole bunch more. It was the same thing, but more, and I thought that was awesome. I don't think all 3 movies are equal, but I think when you look at them as a whole, it's a really like cool bit of 80s movies. You know, like I think that it kind of set a standard for what trilogies are in that era.
Okay. Question.
Yeah.
Did you like Back to the Future, the cartoon?
Unaware of this.
Was there a Back to the Future
Oh
cartoon?
my God, was there a Back to the Future cartoon?
Did he just keep going back and completely fucking up the time?
No, it was that you would
every time?
basically Doc, well, it was Doc, Clara, and then the 2 kids were living in modern times with Marty there as their like friend, neighbor, or whatever.
Marty.
And then Doc kept making weird inventions, and they do this. There was one where
I see.
he made this like prototype thing that would make you a really good baseball player, and Marty put it on, and then he got on a team, and then it broke, and he had to deal with that. Rookie of the Year syndrome, happens to
I hate
everyone.
that.
Love
Hate
Rookie
that
of the Year.
plot line.
Rookie of the Year, great film too, good movie too. But Back to the Future 1, great. And it's one of those, I think, underappreciated by me growing up. Because growing up, I have no frame of reference for what, the 50s should be like. So I'm watching that movie and I'm like, I was so excited for Back to the Future 2 because the future is so much more exciting to me than the past was at the time. And so to get there and but then, grow up, rewatch it, learn the movie's fantastic. That screenplay in movies, taught in classes and stuff in terms of like being perfect, in terms of how a movie should be and what it should actually achieve. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are only a couple things that stand out that you can even try to criticize the Back to the Future series on. And they're not really even worth talking about, but I will talk about them right now. what is this relationship Marty has with this
Doc.
old doctor?
Yeah, you don't think about that often.
You don't think about that often, but it starts with Marty being in the doctor's house in the morning.
Yeah, he swings by. He wants to use the amplifier. Why not?
Swings by. Just came by his house. Unannounced.
Knows where the key
has
is.
a key
Looking
to
for
the guy's
Einie.
house.
Einie's not there.
Does he have a toothbrush at the doctor's house?
No,
his
this is
spare
somebody's
clothes that he
popping
puts-
off.
They share.
How
And
they
he,
learn this? Bob Gale's talked about this, and I think Zemeckis in other interviews
Yeah,
too. Like
I'm
when
just
you
teasing.
when you lay it out, like why are they friends?
Why-
what are they
where-
doing? Why would this old man be
At
hanging
what
out?
point did this old man decide to befriend this numbskull high school kid?
Yeah.
Who has no discernible talents for science whatsoever? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then he goes, "Hey, I'm going to make this time machine that I'm sure will work. Let's call Marty, the 16-year-old idiot
He
kid
has a
that
video
just
camera. He knows how to
skateboards
use video
all the time."
cameras.
Yeah, I guess so.
That was a big deal back then. It wasn't like it is now, where we
it's
get all
true.
video.
Because my dad had a video camera. That was
Hit me. Keep punching me right. Keep punching me right in the flu shot. I don't mind.
glad you got that flu shot.
You still have the Band-Aid in your pocket?
No, this is a different one. Do you want this one in my pocket too?
How many shots did you get?
Can I flick it?
Eat it. Eat it.
I cut my nails today.
Eat it.
Oh, I hate when you have
I
to
did
do
too.
that. I did mine
We
yesterday.
wait. All
We're-
three of
we're
us
all
did today?
synced up.
Did you do
I
yours
did
synced
mine
up.
yesterday.
I cut my nails
Close
today.
enough.
I cut mine this
We're
morning.
on the same cycle.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Everyone always talks about how great Back to the Future is, and I will admit that it is probably one of the best movies ever made, if not one of the best trilogies ever completed. But there are some interesting plot holes in it. Namely, also, his dad sees an alien standing above his bed,
Yeah.
and the next day is totally okay with that. And he's like, I saw Lord Vader. Great.
He was into
Let's ask this-
sci-fi.
Wouldn't that freak you the hell out, though? Especially in 1950s, not knowing what the internet is, not knowing what any of this stuff is, never having seen Star Wars. Little crazy shit is all I'm saying again.
It did. It motivated him.
It did, I guess.
He was
Motivated him.
into it. It'd be like if somebody came into my room dressed as a superhero,
Right.
and it was like, do this. I'm like, oh man, okay.
Would you?
No.
No.
But as a kid, you know.
See, that's the thing is, as a kid, looking at the trilogies, when I first saw the movies, all three of them were already out. So I watched them
Oh.
pretty much back to back to back at Kevin's house, and it was fantastic. The first one ending and saying to be continued, that was like a mind blowing. When that motherfucking car like flew off, I'm like, get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
There's more of this. Like that is, and at that point, I thought every movie was like
Do you know
that.
a little interesting piece of trivia on that one? Theatrical cut. You're in the theater. It ends. There's no to be continued.
Really?
It was that it did so well, they tacked that on for the VHS and all that jazz.
I didn't know that.
And they totally shit canned the original girlfriend and brought in Elizabeth Shue.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
They didn't
Yeah.
shit can her. She quit
She
acting.
decided not
She
to.
went.
Didn't they also chicken? Oh, I see what you're saying. But before they even released the film, then they already have a different Marty too. And then
Oh yeah, well the Marty
Eric
thing
Stoltz,
was-
yeah.
they shot like a good portion.
That's
of
so
it.
incredible.
Yeah, to
That's
watch
so
that
incredible.
footage is so weird to watch.
what a
the
weird
dailies and
thing.
stuff.
Man. It
It's-
must have been so expensive.
I don't
Why,
think I've
Kevin?
seen.
Why would you cut to that shot? Stay in the wide. I hate you.
I think that the two franchises are very similar when you look at Back to the Future and Ninja Turtles, the three movies that came out in the 90s, in the sense that, the first one is the best, then the second one came out and it's the favorite, and then the third one came out and people like want to pretend didn't happen. But the growing up watching those, I definitely had that feeling of Back to the Future 2, I would fucking fight to the death is better than 1.
Oh, yeah.
And Secret of the Ooze, I would fight to the death is better than
you're
the first
nuts.
one. But then
Oh,
it's like,
no.
then when you do watch later, you're like, well, I'm
perspective
wrong.
on it.
I'm absolutely wrong.
The sequence in TMNT 2 where they're fighting over the ooze vial in that lobby is fucking awesome. I'll give them that.
The opening?
Yeah,
When
like,
they
I
jump
love-
off
I-
and they freeze and it says
Yeah.
Ninja Turtles.
That shit was. I was so excited
Hell
when
yeah.
that. But no, the first one's better. Than this.
Would it surprise any of you to know that just yesterday I listened to Go Ninja Go by Vanilla Ice?
Good.
No, it would not surprise me.
I went on a weird
You went into a weird place with it.
journey yesterday on the way home, and I was like, I'm in a great mood. I'm gonna listen to some Vanilla Ice.
He's coming back.
And
with
at
a
one
vengeance.
point, Vanilla Ice, in his seminal song "Ice Ice Baby," says, "I'm gonna grab my 9." I don't think that really happened.
I don't think he ever did.
I don't
You
think
think he ever
Successfully
grabbed
grab
his
it.
9?
I don't think any shit went down that required him to grab a 9 in any, unless it was a 9 iron on the links.
Sure.
Do you think
sure.
we can get Vanilla Ice in this show?
I fucking guarantee we can
100%.
get him on the show.
Let's do it.
I don't think we could, but he had a rap rock album in the late '90s.
Yeah, the Too Cold that he remade, Ice Ice Baby.
Yeah,
and renamed it Too Cold.
I may or may not have downloaded a few of those songs off of Napster back in the day.
What blew my mind about Back to the Future, the original, growing up,
Yeah.
it's because I was a dumb kid, of course, is that I couldn't wrap my head around how they took these old actors and actresses and made them look young. Because when you're a kid, you take everything at face value. So I'm watching it, and I'm watching the 1985 part with Michael J. Fox and Lorraine and George, and they're old people. I'm like, oh, okay. And then when they went back in time and they were young, I was like, How are they doing this? What are they up to? Never thought they were taking young actors and actresses, aging
Make
them up.
them look old.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be the contrarian here, but I will. Back to the Future is a great movie, I think. Apart from the fact that it's literally impossible to go back in time, and would cause all sorts of problems. That aside, it's a movie. We can enjoy it, right? You can go forward in time. You can't go back in time. Sure. The movie's creepy as hell, and like fucking really creepy. One of the creepiest mainstream plots in a movie I can possibly ever think.
His mom.
I can't get past that.
But Colin, I'm gonna be honest with you right now. If your mom was that hot,
All right, I can't. I don't. It's too disgusting and unfathomable. I don't want to.
It's not him trying to fuck his mom.
I would've stayed
It's his
in that
mom
car.
trying to fuck him, which is different.
The plot would have been real
All I'm
different if
saying
it was
is
really
Nick.
weird.
If
If
Colin's
Nick's hot
mom wanted
mom-
to have sex with me,
All right.
I probably would have done it.
I'm sorry.
What
But
if,
wait,
what if,
that's
what if
not
Tim's
the-
what if Tim's hot mom wanted to have sex?
If any of your hot moms when I was like 16
But isn't
and
it
your
your
mom
hot
was,
mom?
Yeah, it is.
I'm
100%.
joking around.
Yeah,
I'm just teasing.
okay.
I'm joking around.
So like that always really irked me about the story where I'm like, this is just the doctor. Like, so the time travel thing, I'm like, all right,
that's
that's
why
fine. The doctor's relationship with Marty is like, that's weird, but it's fine. The acting's all awesome. There's a great actors in this. Michael J. Fox is a fucking G, you know?
He is a fucking G.
And like that movie is really a great movie, but the plot always really annoyed me. And I'm like, it's kind of similar to Ghostbusters in a way. And I hate that like shit on both of these movies because I know Greg loves them. I'm not shitting on them. I think they're both great movies where I'm like, I understand why people think they're great. I don't understand why people think they're like, you know, when I think of the 80s, I think of like The Breakfast Club. I think of
Sure.
Caddyshack. I think of like all of these, you know, Back to School and like all of these like, to me, it's about two things. It's about real comedies, which
Rodney Dangerfield, apparently.
Yeah, it's about. Oh, I love Rodney Dangerfield. But it's about the 80s is about two things to me with movies, and maybe it's just the way I connected these movies. Maybe it's because I also have older siblings, so I kind of adapted their taste in movies. It's like the Brat Pack stuff is fucking the 80s to me. I love those movies. You know, all the way up to like St. Elmo's Fire and stuff like that. I think those movies are awesome. You know, and so that's one thing, and then like real like stupid comedies I think are like, you know, part of that as well. And so I go to that, and yeah, Rodney Dangerfield obviously a huge part of that. I never like go to these and the movies I even love from the 80s like Batman or something like that. I mean, it's 89. I love that movie. I wouldn't put it in that top pantheon. I always had this jumbled kind of pantheon of 80s films because I have such an admiration for nostalgia from these movies. I watch them through a lens of like I was a very young kid, and for some of these movies not even born yet. And I like that, and I don't get nostalgic vibes off of like Ghostbusters or Back to the Future in
They're
the same
fantastical.
way. And so like I don't like, to me the best 80s movies is maybe something like Dead Poets Society or Breakfast Club or something like that, where I'm like, you know, so that's kind of more what resonates with me. So I'm not saying those movies are bad. I'm not saying those movies are anything less than great. You know, when you're like, what's a great movie? Is Back to the Future a great movie? Of course, it's a fucking great movie. But the plot bothered me, and I don't really consider it in that particular way. But I do think a lot of that has to do with the way I look at 80s movies, you know, which is from a much more like very specific nostalgic lens, you know. So like I look at the Breakfast Club's like school scenario, like realistic scenario, is like way cooler and way more immersive.
Well,
to
that's
me
a sign of the times movie, right? When that was, I mean, a lot of people argue that it's timeless, and I will be in that camp as well. That's an evergreen movie, but predominantly it was about John Hughes making a commentary about what it was to be a teen in that era of the 80s. Very reflective. So there's a lot of nostalgia baked into that, right? Is that it was a sign of its time. Like that movie has been remade multiple times, but you have to really rely heavily on the circumstances of. Well, I guess not necessarily for Breakfast Club. I guess that is kind of evergreen. I take that back. Ferris Bueller is a little bit more, I guess, sign of the times. But for the Breakfast Club, I don't know. Like maybe you
No, both those movies I think are there. Because as a kid you can drop in either of those.
You can, but I'm going to take back what I just said because I do feel like if you watched Breakfast Club right now, and you took out
why aren't they on their phones?
That's a good point actually. But if you took out the costumes and say they weren't allowed to be on their phone, that would be just as relevant now. Everything they say would be just as relevant now, because it was about angst and it was about
clicks
not fitting
and this
in
and how,
and not feeling accepted and things like that. So, for me, Back to the Future holds a special place though because of the sheer creativity that went into that film, and that's one of those things where there are very few films today and that I watch and think, I want more of that, right? And that's probably a sign just that there's just so much out there that you're never really bored. But when I was a kid, it was like you'd see that, and then there would be this long ocean of nothing in between like, a Back to the Future and another movie that was of that caliber. And so to me, like, that's one of those where you watched it at the end, you're like, God, I just wish there was like one more minute of this, right? Or we could watch another one, and then it's slow. You want to get to the Back to the Future 2, and then you're like, God damn it, my only other recourse now is Back to the Future 3, which we all can agree is not the best in the trilogy. But I'm going to watch it anyway because it's more of these characters that I love.
Yeah.
It's more of this time traveling gimmick.
I mean, I think with the movies, something that I've always found in the films that I put in the upper tier is that they follow rules really well. They set up rules to what their world is, and they stick to it. And I think that Back to the Future kind of did that. It made us really think about time travel. It was definitely the thing that got me thinking about, if we were to go back in time, how would that affect things? And that first time I had that conversation in my head, it reminds me of Inception a lot, where it's like that movie gave us something to think about and think about the rules that movie has to fit in. And it's like, we want more. Now, Inception, I think it's a good thing we don't get more. But with Back to the Future, I think that movie ending and then, going to the future in the second one, going to the past in the third one, that all made sense because it wasn't serious. You know what
exactly.
I mean? It is still very comedic and like kind of
when you moved to 2 and you changed the tenor
top.
of the movie and you changed exactly you amped everything up in a way, right? Who the characters were, made them over the top. The same thing we talk about in negative, I think, with like an Eric Matthews or a Homer Simpson. They got dumber and dumber.
Yeah.
Doc got crazier and crazier, and Marty got more and more like lost in his whole chicken thing and all that jazz.
Mm-hmm.
But as you amp that up, you still keep the touchstones of the universe, right? Like when we did, I always talk about that. That's when I knew how great Lego Dimensions was, right? When they came through into the Twitch stream with us and they debuted the Back to the Future content, and you kind of forget about like how much Hill Valley and stuff. So to be in the 85 Hill Valley and go to the future Hill Valley and go to the past Hill Valley and be in like these 3 scenarios where it's always based, like you're talking about like storytelling beats, right? And how they drive stuff home like that. The clock tower being there and Doc being there and all these like, the
soda shop.
Exactly. And the manure and all these different like gags that are in a way lazy, that it's always kind of the same movie, but also endearing in the same way of like this.
Yeah.
In Back to the Future, the original, right? They do that in such a condensed thing where, you're talking about it being a nostalgia part to then this fantastical part of like that whole first part of that movie of Marty and Jennifer, and she's gonna babysit, and she writes on the flyer like the number for the place she'll be babysitting at, you and I love you, and like that's that part where it's still grounded in reality, where you understand like, oh, young love, being in high school, that kind of thing, and then tossed on the fantastical adventure. But then even that like that's where like like I feel like movies nowadays, right? I forget what we're talking, if it was Independence Day or if it was Suicide Squad. When I leaned over, I'm like, that's gonna be important later on. They they treat the audience like a bunch of idiots, right? And just pound them over the head with the information of like, this is what you'll need to save the world eventually. This is what it's going to be all about. Right. Whereas that is a movie, I feel like, where she writes it down and you crumple up the flyer and put it in your pocket. And watching Back to the Future for the first time, not now with everything we know, you don't stop to think of like, oh, that lightning strike on the clock tower is going to be critical to this entire story.
Yeah, it was those were very cleverly set up devices to help move the story along, which was and very well done and very subtle. I mean, by the time they got to 2, it was you could tell that they made a very conscious effort to be like, yo, we're gonna do these callbacks. It's gonna be really, really fun because it is going to have that sort of playful nature to it. Like we know this is a little bit more on the nose. We've already used the clock tower, but we've seen it now, and let's use it in a different way. And I think they did that really well. Also, the second one had hoverboards,
of course,
which was
hoverboards don't
when
work
I
on
was
water
a kid.
unless you got power.
I was terrified of hoverboards because everyone wanted one, and I didn't like physical exertion. And I thought to myself, if everyone gets a hoverboard, I'll have to get a hoverboard, and then I'll have to do something. And I don't want to have to do anything.
I understand.
I rollerbladed for approximately 2 months. Threw them out after
You could have
that.
just watched Jaws 3D and been fine.
That's true. Or
Over
Rocky
and over.
8. What was it? Rocky
Whatever it was.
800.
Well, that was so weird when the Cubs almost won the World Series.
Yeah.
That's what happened in Back to the Future, and then that almost happened last year.
Well,
when
I
was
mean,
going.
speaking of that, in Akira in 2020, the Olympics are in Japan, and now that's actually happening.
Oh, that's crazy.
Here's the big question for you, Tim.
Yeah.
I'm going to you because you're a red-blooded male. You're wearing your Bounty Man shirt. You got the lumberjack beard. Hypothetically, you break up you open a door.
Narnia.
Your next what? You already do that?
The Narnia door?
No.
No.
You open up a car door.
Car door.
You
yeah.
find who will be your future wife.
Okay.
Being sexually assaulted by someone.
Oh, God.
You knock that guy the fuck out.
Okay.
You think,
Boss.
you think 30 years later you're gonna let that guy? You're gonna want to be around that guy? Let him work on your car?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That's
Again,
a
I'm saying
solid
there are some very big problems
Yeah.
with this film. Big problem.
But it's a movie, and that. But
it
it's
is a
like
movie.
that's the thing is you're right.
It was a different
You're
time. I understand too.
But
Let's
even
also
then, but like
not-
it's a funny joke.
Let's
you know?
let's not lament on the fact that Doc was working for terrorists at the very beginning of the
Back
film.
then, we didn't think they could do anything.
Yeah, I mean, back then terrorists were just,
Gave him a Bob
It
Volt
was just a buzzword.
Yeah, he fucking stole plutonium. He was supposed to make them a bomb,
A nuclear
right?
bomb, yeah. He
They
just filled it
hired him
with
to make
ping
him a
pong-
nuclear
ping pong
bomb, and
parts.
he just thought it was okay
pinball
to be
parts.
like, I'm going to use that for my
weapons grade plutonium.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing too. Is like I love watching. I don't know when last time you watched Back to the Future was, but I love what like the Libyans, slam into like a photo booth, like those things that used to like develop photos. They're not dead.
No, they're coming back.
You jump into the future and leave them in the photo booth, and Marty comes back, and Doc opens the vest, and everybody's
Right.
like, "Yeah." And I'm like, Libyans are getting out of that booth any second now, pissed off with their AKs still.
And if not, they're probably going to try for you again. Now, I granted you've mastered space-time travel at this point, but if you fuck up once, those Libyans are not going to forget. They're not going to forget.
Oh,
And
they
as
don't
we
forgive.
know,
They don't forget.
Libyan terrorists have only gotten stronger in the last 40
They're
years.
the worst.
They're the worst.